Yeah, so we're going to kick this off, and the first kind of category here is going to be top units that were released in 2022 and just kind of came out as, a misfire or a dud, so to say. That doesn't necessarily mean that the unit is bad. It can be, maybe a circumstance of timing. So definitely keep that in mind as we're going through these. So without further ado, let's start getting into the units here, guys.
Let's do it. Artificial drum roll.
And the number 5 unit is Queen. So Will, what are your thoughts on Queen this year?
No, Queen's a lot of excitement because she is that hybrid unit, potentially so, between how you equip her for attack and magic and strike damage and some magic and some curative abilities and some offensive abilities. And for whatever the timing was or just the balance of what was offered at the time, just couldn't cut it. Whether, we were at that hill of penetrations in the game too, where she kind of does Jack of all trades, master of none, and Lightning was in kind of a not a confused state, but it was definitely in a turbulent state where we got Ibarra and then Esther came out, and so there was kind of this identity crisis that Queen just never really landed. And Water, for as strong as it was, Queen just surprisingly so strike damage. That's what Celeste and Ashes are weak to. She just never actually made an impact in the way that we were hoping. So yeah, definitely a flop in that regard. And then even as it pertains to the rest of the game, not a big PvE unit, so it's not like you get to use her in a variety of other ways. So yeah, I think it's kind of on the head there.
Yeah, Esther definitely stole a bit of her thunder, pun intended. But yeah, that you're exactly. Celis and Astrius Lightning Strike is their weakness. I think if we didn't have Esther, she would have had maybe a bit more of a niche, but Esther blows those units up. So Esther was very popular as well. A lot of people pulled for her. A lot of people were excited about that unit. And turns out she was really, really solid. So yeah, Queen. I think we were chatting a little bit about this yesterday, but we both were kind of in that camp of, I want this unit to work, but I don't know. There's just better tools for the job that most people have at this point. It's not that she's a terrible unit, but yeah, I think there's just more efficient units that you can put out there.
That's exactly it. It comes down to, particularly for most kinds of PvP, team of 3, right? Like, you just got to drop someone somewhere. If you need someone to heal, you got Resnick. If you need top tier damage, there's obviously other kind of lightning options. If you need a tankier unit, not that she's actually relatively durable, but even then she's not comparatively to some of them. So it's a rough spot.
Yeah. I don't think it would take a ton to save her. I think if her penetration values are up to bit, then she can be pretty solid. Especially with the news of Alphonse Lightning Strike unit just came out in JP. Maybe they could be a decent pair when she gets her 140 in the future. So
absolutely. And also Lightning has had a nice magic resurgence as of late with the new Esper, Darker Moon coming out, and Summer Helena. It just all those little extra additions can certainly change things too.
So let's move on to our next unit here, and that is Mr. Golbez from Final Fantasy IV, the Linnarian himself. So what are your thoughts on Golbez? He may have been the first unit to release this year, or maybe he came out just after June, but it was within that first couple of weeks of January. A lot of people were excited for him. How about you? Were you excited for Golbez?
Absolutely was. Up to that point, we hadn't had a good mage spellcaster in a while, and he came out, and obviously we were so enthralled with Black Rose Elena for so long that we see this other spellcaster come out that has a variety of different kind of imperils, and there's a lot of excitement around Dark kind of changing its profile as the identity changed. It seems to change every couple months, and the statistics of them just didn't work out in practice, just a little too slow. The bulk was seemingly there on paper, but in practice, people were cleaving through those defense and spirit values pretty easily over time. And it just didn't end up working out.
It's easy to kind of, especially at that time, it was very easy to fall in love with the defense and spirit numbers and kind of the chonky, mitigations that he can throw up. But the problem is that they just last so shortly into the battle, just a couple of turns. if that was indefinite into the battle, that would make him quite a bit better. And yeah, he needs better absorption, I think, too. He needs to be able to maybe close to full heal himself.
Right, he does technically have the barrier, so he does have enough survivability. I really just think it comes down to, I don't want to say the stats of a unit, because there's way more that comes into a unit than just stats, but I know agility is kind of a big factor for him, that when you talk about putting him against a couple other teams, he just doesn't do enough damage to make up for some of the lapping that eventually occurs, and him getting slowly chunked away out.
Hey Kiwi, welcome in, man. Recheck on Golbas. He was I think second week of January.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people think he was last year because Final Fantasy IV, I think, started in December. But that was the rerun of the old units, and Golbez didn't come out until January.
That's correct.
All right, so let's move on to the next one here. And this one is a more recent one. This is Hope from Final Fantasy XIII. He was a free unit. I'll start this one off. Yeah, this was another unit that like we kind of knew right off the bat he wasn't good, just from what we'd heard on JP side. It was pretty hard to fit him into what Light wanted to do. One of his best moves is that physical damage amp, and he doesn't have a great target to use that on right now. Most of the best Light units are magical focused. Jaden, Sakura, and Elena. I mean, Lucio, he can be okay, in maybe like a anti-dark party, but I think that there's better units for it. I think you probably want to go magic based mostly if you can. But yeah, Hope, he's got the time mage angle. He's got kind of quick casting he can do. It's kind of interesting. He just isn't a good fit right now, and I'm not sure if he'll get there anytime soon. But there is the new Stern unit coming out on the JP side. He's going to be a boss physical unit for Light. So maybe the time mage support and the physical amp could be interesting with that unit in the future. So we'll have to see.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's on paper, he's got everything you would want in terms of, let's say magic stat and even the AoE resistance innately. He definitely survived a little more than I thought he would. It's still not, amazing and up to par some of the other units, and obviously lacks some of the other kind of gimmicky survival tools, but he does have enough, magic penetration with the Valfor sub, or the Valfor vision card, if you will, as well, and can do some potent amount of damage. It's just not the right time and not the right comp.
Yeah, I just saw a question in the chat. So just so you guys are aware, so these are kind of in order of preference or lack thereof, like in these cases. So yeah, as we kind of go through the list, we think this is what we kind of came to as a consensus of the unit that was the worst flop of the year, essentially.
Yep.
So, yep, these are definitely in order of preference.
Right. Agreed. And there's some wiggle room. There's a couple that, we'll mention some honorable mentions, and a variety of reasons they could shift around in the list, but I think it's pretty spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of Hope, like I think he was definitely one of the worst units, but I think like in terms of nobody really thought that he was going to be good, so nobody was really expecting a ton out of him. So I think that's why we kind of shifted him off of like the one spot. Ronan, on the other hand, I think was a unit that some people, had a little bit of excitement for. Again, this was another unit that kind of had some thunder stolen with Abara coming out just a couple months before him, maybe 3 or 4 months prior. He was kind of a victim of circumstance a bit of when he was released, and yeah, he has some good things that he can do. He's aged very well though, and I think he's going to continue to age well, just mostly because of the job updates. The Kodadama updates were very good to him. But yeah, Will, if you want to talk about kind of when he was released and what kind of stunted his initial appearance in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his release, right? It was the height of the Celeste meta and the light evade meta as well. And his accuracy left something to be desired. You certainly could gear for it and go hyper accurate, but even then, you're still leaving some up to chance. And the water matchup, I had thought upon his release that Ibarra actually would have enabled him, where Runic Blade doesn't absorb limit breaks. So in my head, I'm like, okay, well, no big deal. Ibarra limit breaks, then he limit breaks, and she's dead. And like that's the end of that problem. But it just actually never came to fruition. And his overall AI left a smidge to be desired. A lot of times, what we like to see with people with the devout sub job is that in things like Guild Wars and whatnot that have second follow up attacks, that they have the ability to heal a teammate, and he always prioritizes barrier first, which is just one of those mental hurdles you have to get around as an AI. Where once you kind of get past that and go, all right, well, he's just a bulky mage, and that's all there is, and he's got no real, curative, consistent potential. Then you can kind of move past and build them out different ways. But as you
Yeah.
mentioned with Queen 2, you got Dark Ramu coming out here now, and Summer Helena, and obviously the tanks that are out of the element strengths are going to yield more opportunities for him to shine.
I think his lack of magic resist penetration hurts him as well.
Yep,
He's
tons of
got
spirit. He
the
can easily get tons of spirit penetration, but
yeah,
yeah,
but I mean, Celisk, she can build up pretty good magic resistance and kind of shut him down quite a bit.
totally,
Even without Rinnik once it's down. So
totally.
Amoeba says Ronon's TMR is worth mentioning. It's a
You
it's
know
a
what it is?
it's a good
Oh,
TMR.
I'll go with you on that. I wish it was two usages. That's my only downside to it. Particularly when you have the Cane helm, the Dragoon helmet does have two usages, so there is a precedent for haste pieces of TMRs having double usage. Because this is only single use, I got to give it some negative points for that. But on paper and even in practice, yes, it is a very good TMR for that reason.
Same thing with Sorrow's TMR, also one use. It it,
Yeah,
it really annoys me that Tagumi kind of flip flops on, some are two uses and some aren't. It's really annoying for like setting up Guild War in particular.
it is. I would have to imagine it's somewhat A for power creep. New units want to give them stronger TMRs. Well, giving it two usages is a way to do that. But I also feel that's probably some balance as well, where ones where they feel like are overtuned, they leave for one usage instead. Just a hunch, but yeah.
Yeah. And
All
our
right.
number one, Valentine's Eldyra, or Sweetheart Eldyra, as she's known here on Global. Will, why don't you kick this one off?
Yes, this is an interesting one because honestly, she's actually not a bad unit. She's genuinely not. There's a lot of good things about her kit that are extremely good. It's just been very hard to make her work throughout the years so far through some of the metas we've seen, and even against the traditional ice comps that we see right now. She's not one of those fire units that really helps dominate them, with Snow being such a sturdy physical tank. Her she's going to be incredible. This year, though, very difficult. And just anecdotally, I was shocked by this. The week after she was released, they're always used as bonus units in Arena, right?
Yeah.
This was the first time I'd ever seen the top 10 Arena not include the unit from that week. People were running Dark Meta consistently because they were like the second and third tier bonus units, because she and Fire were so bad that they literally couldn't beat Leela and the other Dark Meta at that time. I'd never seen that before in Arena, where a character was just flat out omitted from a party. So, there's going to be some vision card love that's going to help the Fire cast, and it's not purely her. Obviously, there's a lot of problems with the element too in terms of their identity. But this year, I can't remember a unit that came out and just did absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Had for quite a while.
I mean, the silver lining for her, I guess, was she has a great chaining unit, great PVE unit for guild raids,
Absolutely.
and she certainly helped out that fire team quite a bit. But in terms of PvP, very much a victim of circumstance on when she was released, and Fire's identity crisis that's been going on for the better part of a year. So once Sorrow comes out, that's kind of the next brick for that evade team, and then that'll culminate at third year anniversary with Yuffie and her vision card, and then that'll be a very solid evade team. Even with just Sorrow's vision card, and then teaming up those two, it's with King Mont, it's already a pretty decent team. But yeah, Yuffie and her card takes it to a different level.
Absolutely. Yeah,
But
I mean,
her,
agility and luck are two staples of top tier vision cards. The fact that Fire has neither, the 15% or the 35%, not including just the power crepness of many of their vision cards, very difficult from a vision card economy perspective to make it work.
Yeah, luck and agility, I'd say, are the two most important stats in the game. So having them both on, not talking resistances and things, but just in the 5 basic stats, I think that luck and agility are the most important ones. So,
Absolutely.
and you could argue luck is the most powerful one just for all that it does.
I would agree. Yeah, evasion, accuracy, and crit avoidance. There's 3 bang, 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 effects on that, and it's part of the unit affinity. It's one of those 3 stats, so definitely a hidden mechanic for many, equations.
Yeah. X Ferris says, "I feel sorry for anyone who pulled her because 2 or 3 weeks later you could get her with 600 shards included." I think I may have first pulled Ildira.
I pulled. I was one of those. You can feel sorry for me.
My pull luck this year was insane. Like for the Warriors, the Crystal, I think I got 4 of them on first pull, which is insane.
I painted a lot of them. Yeah, I made the mistake. I was doing at the time some of the paid banners where it's like the double drop rate on steps 1, 3, and 5, and mathematically it didn't make sense for me to continue doing that. So I got the rough end of things for a while there.
That's super rough, especially because I mean, can we talk for a second just as a sidebar? They really need to do something about the 42k pity on each and every unit, right? Okay for 100 cost units, but 90 costs and 70 costs should be cheaper, even outside of just being easier to pull.
I agree. Even if it's just that old mechanic of like after every 5th pull, it's like double drop or whatever it is, even if there was something in there to help mitigate the odds just a little bit, so that if you were to do the math for it, it would lower that expected cost or what do you call it, total cost, just something to reduce that just a smidge.
Yeah. All right, guys, so that is our top 5 units who flopped this year. Again, it doesn't mean they're a bad unit. Like we were talking about, some of them victim of circumstance, victim of maybe some vision cards or support to do what they want to do in their elements, but those were our top 5. So let us move on to our we're not actually going to be able to see this because my chat is in the way. Hold on, let me try to actually you can see it, never mind.
Oh, dishonorable mentions.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, time check, we probably should move the next couple slides along. We're gonna end at midnight at this point.
So real quick on the dishonorable mention, if you want to just burn through these real quick.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the thing with CT was that she was just too early. Ice wasn't fully formed at that time, and Fire was going through that identity crisis, if you will. There wasn't a lot of missile units to really take advantage of that, and statistically and utility-wise, she just didn't bring a lot that the game needed at that time. So CT was definitely just kind of the wrong time. She's by far the best damage dealer of the Fire cast, and she will continue to do so, and her 140 is very good, but just where she was released took way too long to actually get that usage. And Chunok and Shreese are really just also that victim of timing, where we knew we were getting Dragon Quest coming up soon. We knew Shadow Lynx was on the horizon. We got Sylvie. We knew the 3rd anniversary is coming, so people are starting to hoard a little more for the future expenditures of Sephiroth and whatnot. So these lower cost units, they come out and no one just does anything with them whatsoever.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, let's shuffle along. All right, worst Mastery 2s. And our number 5 pick is Thancred. This guy, he needed a lot more than what he got. They kind of just, they had actually already given him a Mastery 2 quite a while ago, and then they just tacked on the light attack and HP onto that, and then I think they just gave him like a little bit more attack or HP or something, and not exactly what he needed. So his main niche in the game has been kind of his good physical resistances and physical mitigation, but he's just too slow and not having a limit burst. And similar to other units, the massive penetration uptick in the game has really hurt any value that he had back in the day, and his damage just doesn't make up for it. So that's kind of where he stands.
Absolutely. Yeah, just for 100 cost unit in particular, totally outdated. And I guess don't say this often. Statistics do not define a character, but there's a couple where the stats are just so bad you can't recover from it. He is one of them. The agility stat is just so slow.
Yeah,
The
bad
resistance is
accuracy.
the accuracy is just horrendously bad. And then to top it off, you have that -30 magic resistance. Like, are you kidding? There's so many ways to expose him. And the Master 2 just did nothing.
Yeah, that's another design thing that they've really moved away from, is giving units the really bad in one category resistance, like the Victoras, the Thancreds, the Angleberts of the world. The closest we've really seen to it has been Esther. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, and so Styx McGee, the missile null Thancred is like, that's like the absolute not meta. The amount of missile penetration that now exists, like, it's absolutely cleaved through. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
And the defense penetration, characters are getting 80 defense pen now. So whatever your defense stat is, like, take 80% of that away. Like, it's rough.
Like you can use him as null missile against like Prompto or against Cloud or Lightning.
Lightning, yeah.
But yeah, most of the other missile damage dealers have 40 to 70%, missile res penetration. So
yep.
All right, number 4, Ziza. She got some evade and really not too much else. She's just kind of been bottom tier for so long. She really kind of her own saving grace was in the manual PvP scene. She was actually quite good for a while early on, mostly because of charm being overpowered. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Ziza?
No, same thing where she's at -25% magic resistance. Like, that's just a very hard thing to recover from, particularly when you have to gear her so intensively for evasion that you can't get those things to build up the resistance, where a lot of other characters you can throw in an Esper that has the magic resistance or a piece of armor that has it. You just can't with those evade units. And yeah, they gave her 20 evasion or whatever it is, but she still suffers from a lot of things in her kit, that the passives are outdated, and just the strike damage in general, the modifiers on a couple things, it just doesn't work in practice. So not a good Mastery 2 at all.
She had kind of a small moment in the sun when her EX first came out, and she was like One Punch Woman.
Yes.
She was like the first unit in the game, or one of them, that could reduce single target resistance, and she did that pre-damage, so that was pretty cool. In terms of like what to look forward to for her, the monk job revision is interesting. Like the revive skill that they have gets a lot better, and chakra gets a lot better, so that's kind of cool. But they didn't really do much, damage wise for it. So
I'm looking at it right now. I hadn't seen that. Yeah, it's nice on paper. I don't think it's going to help do a lot, but
yeah,
there's actually some. I'll give them that. There's actually some nice upgrades here that try to salvage the character. I'll give them an A for effort for sure.
It's interesting. I'm not sure if it's going to actually be good though.
No,
all right, number 3, Whisper, or otherwise known as Sasayaki. Why don't you take this one?
Yeah, this is one that I was really pushing for, where her style of tank is all about resistances and what I like to always talk about, effective HP, where you trade off some lower HP values, but you are able to take less damage via those resistances in your defense and spirit. And her EX upgrade, where they upgraded Divine Healing, Divine Shelter to give her Protect Shell, Regen, a couple other things like the debuff resistances were really good, but they did not address two things that are at this point really big weaknesses. The first one is the resistances, where because there's so much penetration, she just doesn't live long enough. Her health pool just straight up isn't large enough. So not giving her the HP necessary is a big downside, but also just offensively, she needs to contribute something, and her offensive abilities genuinely just like aren't all that great. They're really short range. They're really limited in terms of being like that cross shape. You have to like line up exactly with your target. The limit break is like literally a square around her. There's just, her kit is such a mess that Mastery Blade did nothing to make her. She's just nothing. She's not even a tank. She's not even a damage dealer. I don't even know what she is.
Another unit that has no accuracy and is too slow. So yeah, not gonna be able to cut it when units these days are getting up to 115, 120 or higher agility. So
definitely.
All right, number 2, speaking of slow units, one of the slowest in the game, Eileen. She was one of the first Mastery 2s early this year, and unfortunately didn't save this unit. Sorry, Orange, but I know you're well aware that it wasn't good enough. Hopefully, maybe her 140 can do something for this unit, because other than beating up on Orlando, she's really never had much to do in the game. So what are your thoughts on Eileen?
No, I had like a smidge of hope for like half a second, obviously with Oberyn coming out, and how Earth was really trying to lean into that Pierce identity, where if you say, oh yeah, like Pierce attack up, and they were one of the earlier elements to have that unit and AoE resistance too, and they have Earth attack up on one of their more popular vision cards. The attack, like the vision cards are there to support her, and you just really can't get over, again, one of those characters where the stats are just really bad. That not only is it an older job set, but really just nothing else to offer in terms of impact, and like only 4 passives to choose from. Just very one-trick pony.
The Lancer job upgrade gives her a guaranteed hit, which helps her accuracy issue at least. And she has the attack value to put out some damage, and she has the, Imperil on her limit burst. So, I mean, I don't think that it would take a lot to make her good, but she really needed like 10% agility, 12% agility to come in, in one of these upgrades, and they didn't give it to her.
Absolutely.
So,
yep.
All right, worst Mastery 2 of 2022 is Venera. What are your thoughts on Venera?
Yeah, so Venera obviously was a very popular character for a super long time. One of the better evade units in the game. She paired supremely well as that kind of slash missile hybrid, where for a long time characters did not have 2 attack types in their kit. She was somewhat unique in that regard. But the mastery ability just really didn't do anything other than maybe some slight power creep adjustments, where they gave her, I think it was just this extra 5% evasion, 15 slash attack. Like that 15 modifier just really isn't material enough to do anything. And that was basically it. It was, 5 evasion and 15 slash attack. And there's just, I don't even know what you could do for a better MA2, to be honest. Like, I feel like there needs to be either a passive upgrade in her mastery or an upgrade to one of her abilities, just because what she does now is so blasé and par for the course for many damage dealers that it just gets lost and thrown by the wayside.
Yeah, these old evade units, they needed the Ruin Stern treatment, or they needed the Ketone treatment, or the deleted treatment, like the physical barrier. Like a 3-hit physical barrier for her would have been huge, or even if it was like a 3-hit 35% all damage barrier or something like that. They're kind of trying the Lisol unit, like the new Winds kind of assassin type character from JP. I feel like that's kind of the modern version of Venera, and when you kind of look at what she can do, this unit is kind of pretty far off. They tried to kind of morph her a little bit into like kind of the life-stealing kind of vamp type unit, and she just doesn't have the HP pool or enough survivability to really back it up. So
no, totally. And she had her time, so I don't feel that bad about it. She was meta for quite a long time, so not everyone can be on top of the game forever.
Yep. So that was the top 5 worst. Here were a couple other that were in consideration. The OG Stern unit and Mediana. I feel like these two are kind of 2 sides of the same coin. They are glass cannon damage dealers from the day 1 of the game. They really didn't get much of anything from their Mastery 2s. Stern, they tried to give them just a little bit of survivability. It wasn't nearly enough. And Mediana, remind me what on she got like some adjustments to her limit burst, I think, and some of the range heights.
So they updated the range height and the limit burst, but her they increased her magic by 10% and the magic resistance. That was the big thing where we talk about wonky resistances. She is -20 to all 4 of the physical types, and only you can't live with that. Like it's not viable. So
she just gets one hit by everyone.
Everything. She has no the defense and spirit, and the HP is supremely low. It's just it's a nothing.
It's so funny that that so many day one players re-rolled and for so long to get that unit. And first of all, they later gave her out for free to everyone, but
Yep,
yeah, she actually had very early on in the game she was very good, especially for taking out Engelberts.
absolutely.
Those
Absolutely. I
those
actually I 120'd her almost immediately when she had the 120 because that was the height of the Yuna meta, and one of her or ability upgrades was healing power down, and I saw that and bugged out, and I'm like, this is the Yuna counter, and not even close. The girl just gets absolutely slapped around.
And we have Fryevia on there as well. It was another mastery 2 that was very much just kind of here's some stats, like here's a bunch of HP, and that was about it. I think that really didn't do much of anything for her. I think that what has made this unit kind of survive is she's very good against wind magic teams, which were around for quite a while. That's kind of her niche in the game. But then like the white mage job upgrades are pretty nice for her actually with the regenerator passive. The 20 healing power that gives, doubles up because she heals herself a lot. And she can actually put out some pretty nice healing with that, especially if you've, invested in trust stones for her. So not a bad
Yeah,
unit, but the mastery 2, I think, wasn't exactly what she needed.
no, definitely. She definitely still like does that job superbly well. For anybody that may or may not remember, I entered into a War of the Visions official Twitch stream tournament, and my first match was against JB, and he came out and absolutely raffle stomped me. I came out with More the Merrier and a wind magic comp at a time when no one was running ice. And of course, he comes out with Fryevia and just like dashed my hopes and dreams. So she does that. I very vividly remember being like, "There's like a 1% chance he comes out with his team," and the 1% chance is it. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big stat upgrade, and she does the thing she's supposed to do even better. But it's not applicable to a variety of instances.
Hey, Odaiba, welcome in. How you doing, man?
But
A-
Diva, what's up?
And Amoeba, yeah, Dwayne would most definitely be on here if his mastery 2 wasn't in limbo. We should have gotten it a
Yeah.
couple of months ago, and Gumi is kind of forgotten about it somehow, like they did with Vadim. So I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Hopefully they rework it just a smidge. It doesn't honestly it won't take much to make him good either. Just honestly a little bit of extra HP and maybe like 5 points of agility, not even. And he's relatively competitive given the utility he has.
Yeah, it would be nice if they did give him a little bit of love for global, considering his history with global and how he kind of started here, kind of kicked off some of the GL Fest stuff.
Yep. Yep. It's been long enough. We haven't seen him in a long time, you know.
All right, so next category is units who fell off the map this year. So units who, maybe they were played a lot early on in the year, or at some point, in the various metas, or maybe units who were played a lot towards the, in 2021, maybe towards the end of 2021. So
It's
first
really I
up,
know for myself a lot of these units, it's ones that were prevalently meta through 21 and then just absolutely off a cliff and you haven't seen them again.
yeah. And then we're gonna kick it off here with Yuna at number 5. So what are your thoughts on Yuna?
Yeah, obviously like a very strong meta defining unit for quite some time. And I couldn't even tell you exactly when it ended up killing that meta. It was a variety of reasons, but you just don't see her around anymore for the fact that there's a lot of other really good healers in this game, so she does not have that uniqueness as much. And I know with her mastery ability, they tried to kind of balance her by giving her some extra offensive output, which at the time she did also pack a punch in certain circumstances when you weren't ready for it. But um, the Aeon Bond counter ability slowly became not a strong point, and it's hard to describe exactly why, but there's enough characters now with counter cure and regen and physical barriers and things that killing her isn't as hard as it once was, and I think it's really what it comes down to.
Well, she was even used quite a bit at the end of last year or early this year in the Jalena comps.
Yeah,
And once wind started getting built up, and then of course dark coming in, and lightning and all these other elements started getting built up this year, the Jalena comp just kind of wasn't being used as much. Celis was obviously a big part of that. So,
absolutely.
um, but I mean, she did get her mastery 2 this year. I think it was a decent mastery 2 with kind of the casting time. That's a huge
Yeah,
for her. I think another thing that's kind of helpful for her is the green mage updates. Vitalize goes from 25 to 40% agility boost, which is pretty. It's essentially haste at that point. So,
Right.
yeah, she's not a bad unit, but yeah, she definitely her usage has fallen off.
Yep. Absolutely.
2B. This was basically this was one of Wynn's main units, up until this year, and not used. I never see this unit being used really these days. Too
Nope.
squishy, and all the units are much more accurate than when she was released. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, also, so she's got the downside that her barrier is only 3 turns instead of 3 times, which is kind of unique and for the worse. And yeah, for a long time, people forget that Wind was in a very I don't want to say unusable spot. That's not the case, but they were in a very tough spot. And 2B was kind of the shining beacon, particularly with their vision card, which when that vision card came out, and it still is to this day, an immensely good vision card. And there were even a couple maps there where people were playing her for the slash resistance buff that should be given. I remember there's this great comp with like King Mon and a couple other characters where 2B was an integral part. And again, early on, was one of the few characters that had that dual attack type in the main job of both Flash and Pierce. That's very common nowadays, but that was very unique for quite some time. So on paper, she was just seemingly excellent and never really hit that peak, and then just completely fell off the cliff.
Yeah, the Berserk resistance buff was really cool too for all the King Mont bombs and stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
It seemed like they kind of had this thought or direction for that they wanted her to be kind of tanky against magic with like some spirit and things like that. But she kind of needs a lot more to really get there.
Totally. Yeah, she was one of the first bulkier evade units. There weren't many of them at the time. They were very much glass cannon. If you think back to, or not glass cannon, but lower HP, not a lot of survivability. You think back to Venera and Ketone and Ziza, all of those evade units back in the day. And she came out, and all of a sudden she's got some, defensive spirit. And she's got a barrier for 3 turns. Like that's cool. Like that was definitely new at the time for that kind of unit.
She kind of has some AP issues too.
Yep.
I hope this unit comes back. I would like to see the near units come back and get a 140, and I would like to see A2 come along with them. Yeah. So hopefully we can get that this year. We'll see.
Definitely. Well, I hope so. I know this is one of their biggest collabs for other games like Octopath and whatnot. I'm sure they'll bring back the near at some point or another.
So people can get their hands on that pod.
Yeah, the pod accessory, you need it. Heck, even the Wind Vision card, the Near Vision card is one of the best ones for Wind. You need that.
So another unit who really fell off is Dwayne, and that really had already started at the end of last year. But I feel like his place in the game really, with the kind of the new generation of tanks, Joom, Celis, Snow, he just really doesn't have a place as a tank these days, and his damage and survivability isn't really good enough, I think, to really be counted on as a bruiser in today's game either. So he doesn't really get much play these days.
Totally. Yeah, no, I just did a video on this where he it was one of the first tanks with innate hate on the passive, which was a significant competitive advantage. Then it became par for the course for every tank, and then we went through a very long period of time where, as he just mentioned, tanks were having survivability just additions with protect, shell, or if it was courage on Engelbert or barriers, who knows what, but Dwayne was lacking that. So in addition to not being able to regen that hate, but also lacking those survivability options, he obviously fell off. Now that's kind of swung back around, where many of those tanks, with the amount of protect and shell removal that exists and dispel that exists, you are seeing tanks kind of get that roll compression where glorified bulky DPS are really just fine. And I actually think Dwayne's not that far off. I was looking at him again today based on our rehearsal, and yeah, he's got 38% dark resistance on his basic attack. He's got 25% slash and peril. He's got an AoE barrier break. So you've seen those Lucia comps where she's in a group and she's got that barrier. He's one of the few that has AoE barrier break. It's also dispel re-raise on a different one. There's a lot of things there in the main kit that he's not
got
far
slash
off.
and a dark and peril too.
Really, yeah. Exactly.
His kit is great. He needs a bit more survival. He could, if they kind of molded his kit into a little bit like Snow, give him a little bit more hate, maybe put him up to 8 or 10, and then give him a heal back or a barrier, and I think he'd be usable again.
Definitely needs that. I will say his Dragoon sub job has an interesting buff on it where I didn't realize this, but the Dragoon buff gives Protect, and when you have Protect on, increases your crit rate by 25 and the reaction block rate by 100. So I'm super intrigued by the notion of him self-giving Protect, having the Dragoon sub job on, increasing the crit rate. Now that the Shadow Links unit just got released and the crit damage on that card, I don't think it. Oh, I'm sorry, it does not apply to him. Let me rewalk that. He does not get the synergies of that vision card, but it was intriguing to say the least of seeing that Dragoon buff. It was interesting.
Well, the other cool thing about Dragoon is it gets the healing power on the HP passive. So, and his limit burst heals himself, I believe, if I remember correctly.
It does. It absorbs 50% of the damage done.
So he could get a full heal coming in and using that. Be kind of neat.
Yeah.
Odaiba says, wow, before Dwayne units didn't have an 8 hate, and that is correct.
Yeah.
We had to.
That was big.
So at that point, there wasn't really very many dispels in the game. So, you know, just throwing up a taunt like, you know, like Warrior of Light did in those days was fine. Or people you would use like Vow of Love, or, you know, as a vision card.
Vow of Love was the thing. Oh, the thing with Taunt Blade, it takes 2 to 3 turns, right? Not only is it 44 AP, but it takes you 2 turns to get that AP and to get in a range. And by that time, tanks are so slow. A lot of times you'd have your teammates to run right by you, start dying, and then by that time, Taunt Blade's a little too late.
Yeah. Speaking of Taunting Blade, Engelbert is our number 2. And this guy was used quite a bit even this year, early on. But, and he was very good, like, you know, still, you know, even against physical units. But as we started getting more magic damage dealers into the meta, and more units who could deal with courage in particular, I think that this guy is really hard to use at this point. So there was just a lot of units had gotten courage dispel, and then, you know, obviously the follow-up attacks are also a big problem for him. So yeah, that's kind of where Engelbert is, and he hasn't gotten his mastery 2 even in JP to this date. So I'm not sure what's going on with that.
I don't either. No, and he is totally one of those victims too of the penetrations where a couple weeks ago, just for the fun of it in arena against the ice meta, I ran him just to see what it'd be like, and he gets absolutely demolished by the amount of defense penetration, missile res penetration. You know, his defense, if I recall, I think like innately, where is it here? He can get 39 with his passive, and like that sounds cool, but 50% is par for the course. So that 39 defense, really only 20 defense, like it's not as impactful as it once was.
Yeah. And then the Paladin job upgrade, which we'll be getting relatively soon, is not very good in my view. So that's really not going to do anything for him, unfortunately. So he's really just waiting for a Mastery 2 and a 140, which at this point I have to assume they're just going to give him both at once. Whenever they want Light to sort of ascend again, which, you know, maybe that's part of the Stern, the Redemption Stern unit.
Yep.
So,
and who knows, maybe they don't. I've heard really good things about Warrior of Light and his 140 reincarnation. Maybe he just replaces Engelbert at this point. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, so number 1 unit who fell off, Mr. UR Zazan. Why don't you give us your view on Zazan?
Yeah, sure. So obviously was one of the more eye-popping units that came out where you said, oh my god, he's got re-raise and Immortal Spirit. He is like in his own tier almost of evasion potential. It's one of those characters where the AI is difficulty because he just doesn't get to use all those buffs that you want him to in terms of both Immortal Spirit and re-raise. And then although there is the vision card support for the slash resistance penetration, the slash attack, it's very difficult. It's very short range attacks for the most part, and it's just not the kind of AI that has flexibility. So you're really dependent upon the map and what a lot of the enemy teams do. And so as we've seen Earth kind of evolve, become more comprehensive and well-rounded between, you know, Oberon's obviously the king of that, but Noctis was a very big piece of that too. Queen Mashri now as well. Ketone with her mastery upgrade in particular has kind of superseded Zazan as that, you know, Earth evade unit. Just unfortunately, it's tough to make him work.
Yeah, Earth, I mean, he's also doesn't have very many AoE attacks, so being kind of forced into only single target attacks you know, it's can sometimes work against you.
Absolutely.
Though sometimes, like I was telling you the other day, he completely one-shot my Raldor with 10k HP on that cave map a couple months ago. So he can definitely put out damage. I think that if you do use Zazan these days, run him as a bruiser. I wouldn't run
Yep.
him evade. Just run him as a bruiser. You can get him up to like 10,000 HP, no problem. He's very bulky for, you know, being one of the most evasive units. His resistances are good, so you know, I would build him that way and just hope that the enemy doesn't have a follow-up attack. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Dishonorable mentions. So other units that were in the discussions were Tifa, and we kind of ruled her out because 2B was, I think, the more popular one out of the duo and was maybe seen a little bit more often. Jaden is a unit that, you know, like we were talking about the Jelena comps, they were everywhere like at the beginning of the year until Celis showed up. He kind of went on hiatus for a while and has maybe only more recently, over the last couple months, started showing up again because the next unit here, Celis, has really, her play has really kind of taken a dive a bit ever since Lightning, I think, specifically came into the game, and I've seen Lightning one-shot Celis, so yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, not to mention Dark Fina being introduced to with her
Yep.
Runic Blade Dispel. You know,
Runic
Dark was
bypass.
just such a big threat. There's a lot of ways that Celeste became inconsistent as a tank, and you know, you still get that prevalence to the water, but it wasn't nearly as long lasting as it was in JP because of Esther's release as well. It really kind of cut out the lifespan of Celeste pretty abruptly there.
Still an amazing unit, and you know, where she applies, like she can still be dominant. But I think her play, like she was used definitely a lot more often, you know, a few months ago.
Yeah, absolutely.